In Africa, South Africa in particular, female students and teachers face oppression and even danger. According to statistics, 30% of female students in South Africa are raped in or around schools. This mistreatment of females is attributed to the traditional views of masculinity in the South African culture. Male teachers are associated with a hierarchical, physical, and competitive culture. The Zulu culture in South Africa sees women as subordinate to men, and female teachers are not excluded. Female teachers that seek to assert themselves academically are badgered by male teachers, normally through rape and physical violence. Female teachers have to turn down head positions in schools in order to denounce rumors about them sleeping around to get to the top.
In India, the recent gang rape and murder of a 23-year-old woman outraged the country. There were mass protests in New Delhi, and the national television broadcaster turned the issue into a countrywide campaign. In South Africa, it's taken the brutal gang rape and murder of Anine Booysen to make the country sit up. Her genitals were mutilated and her fingers and legs broken before she was left to die. She's just one of around 65,000 South African women who've reported they've been sexually attacked each year. Some are now questioning why there's lack of media coverage of rape cases.
My sense is that the media tend to cover rape when something dramatic happens, like the current story. And the tragedy of it is that if we go by the statistics, for example, a woman is raped every couple of seconds in South Africa. By the end of this interview, I would imagine someone would have been raped.
Dr. Chuma says there's a need for the media to stop covering rape stories the way they always have, waiting for something horrific to happen. Instead, journalists and editors need to find creative ways of telling rape stories so that every story is told.
I think if the media fails to do that, they would have failed in their public responsibility. It's an issue that exercises the public imagination. It's an issue that affects everyone. It's a national crisis, which I think the media have got to sort of to play a leading role in highlighting.
But at least one newsreader says it's virtually impossible to report every rape case given the number of cases.
The enormity of the epidemic of rape in this country means that for us to cover every single instance of rape, basically we'd have to cover nothing else. Not a lot of reports of rape cross our desks necessarily. And in fact, it's what happened in India that's ignited this response here. Let's be honest, gang rapes are incredibly common in South Africa.
All three Bidashdorp rape suspects are due to appear in court on Tuesday. Zikhona Chona, Cape Town.
To understand the South African educational system, you have to understand the educational system in Africa at large. In sub-Saharan Africa, less than 80% of school-age girls are enrolled in school. Girls attend school for only about 2.82 years before they turn 16. Also, only 17% of girls are enrolled in secondary school. The gender division of labor within the household results in higher opportunity costs for girls' schooling. We must also understand that families in South Africa are sources of oppression. In sub-Saharan Africa, girls spend 4 times as much time working on productive tasks in the household than boys. Since girls' role in housework is so much greater, parents lose more free labor by sending them to school than they do by educating boys. Schools in sub-Saharan Africa have been criticized for contributing to the disproportionate ratio of girl-boy enrollment. There are few female teachers to serve as positive role models, and those that are teaching are often unqualified and underpaid. Also in South Africa, instead of engaging in their studies, girls complete chores such as cleaning the classrooms, for performing tasks for teachers, and fetching water for the school.
These 16-year-olds have just got their report cards, and they have passed nearly all of their subjects. Next year is their final year of high school. They have big dreams for the future.
I want to be a businesswoman so that I may create opportunities for South African citizens.
But they all failed maths. They say it's because of poor resources in their schools.
We can't concentrate. Usually, you struggle a lot because you don't have those equipment. So, you just do whatever that you think it is okay for you.
Right now, many students don't do well in subjects like maths and science. Under the apartheid regime, white children were given better education. The ruling African National Congress is trying to transform the education system, but it's struggling.
There has been a lot of improvement in the education sector since 1994. A lot of schools have been built and many more children are getting an education. The concern, however, is the quality of that education. A methodology study done by the World Economic Forum showed the quality of South Africa's education is among the worst in the world. Some, particularly in the rural areas, don't have classrooms, chairs or desks. As a result, many children don't finish high school, making it difficult to find work.
It's a focus on the teacher. It's a focus on teacher education. It's a focus on ensuring that our teachers, especially those that teach science and mathematics, or especially those that teach science and technology, will improve their skills best. We improve their knowledge. So it's putting resources in areas that will have an almost immediate impact that will translate into the socio-economic development of this nation.
But until that happens, students grow increasingly frustrated. A good education means a decent job and possibly a ticket out of poverty. But if more isn't done to improve the quality of education in Africa's largest economy, South Africa may struggle to remain competitive globally and on the continent. Haru Matasa, Al Jazeera, Johannesburg.
The matrix of domination clearly affects black female teachers in South Africa. Even though the men are black themselves because men are seen as dominant, they have the power to dominate black females. South African female educators suggest that the Zulu culture perpetuates patriarchy by telling women what they can and cannot do. The black male teachers in South African schools seek to keep female educators in their place by showing a disinterest in their ideas and initiatives. According to a study done in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, many black female educators in South Africa feel as if it is out of their control to change these symptoms of oppression. It is up to the black men to stop subjecting black women to inferior positions within society. It is important to note that black men, as well as institutionalized racism, were agents of oppression for black women. As Joan Morgan suggests, black men are also responsible for the oppression and exploitation of black women. It is interesting that black male educators are affected by the matrix of domination as well. Systems such as the apartheid and racial segregation disable black, South African male teachers from upward social mobility.
Along with the struggles of female educators, the South African educational system was also affected by the apartheid. The apartheid was a system of racial segregation enforced through legislation by the National Party governments in South Africa. The apartheid perpetuated white supremacy and segregated school systems. Even though black female educators in South Africa have been oppressed, they have had several acts of resistance against the sources of oppression for female students and educators. Black women such as Jean September, Mandy Sanger, Vivian Carels fought against the apartheid regime. These women believed in liberation before education and helped their students to fight against racial segregation. These teachers believed in having a non-racist school system and participated in various marches and boycotts to fight against injustice. Jean September was very active in her efforts to get non-white students admitted into the University of Cape Town in the 1990s. In addition to resisting oppression, these women helped to found organizations such as the Teacher Action Committee and Western Cape Teachers Union to build support groups.
DCBC is only 25 years old and South Africa's first black female art gallery owner. During apartheid, blacks were given an inferior education and less opportunities than their white counterparts. In the new South Africa, where 1 in 4 people are jobless,
Thandi is one of many entrepreneurs creating employment in challenging economic times.
A lot of young people, they knock on a door and then a door doesn't open and then they sit around and moan about that, but there's no time for that. It's to just get up and move forward.
Thousands more young people are about to enter the job market. They turn 18 this year, which means they were born in 1994, when Nelson Mandela became the first democratically elected president of South Africa. July 18th is Nelson Mandela Day. The man South Africans call Madiba turns 94 years old. He spent 67 years of his life fighting for social justice. People all over the world are being encouraged to spend 67 minutes of their time doing something good in their community. Mandela is credited with putting reconciliation and national unity at the top of his agenda when he became president, but the poor majority had high expectations.
Many South Africans hoped that the end of apartheid would mean a better life for all and plenty of jobs. Some feel that hasn't happened, and they're disillusioned.
18 years after the end of apartheid, social inequality still persists in South Africa.
You have the accumulation of massive amounts of wealth by a new elite, black upper class elite, which is colluding with, of course, the old white capital and the old white oligarchy. So all of this is very confusing in the minds of many people on the ground.
South Africans often protest, calling for better healthcare, education, jobs and housing. The challenge for today's leaders is to get the poor majority to actively participate in the economy and keep Mandela's legacy alive. Harun Matasa, Al Jazeera, Johannesburg.
Jean September, an educator and an activist against the apartheid, graduated from the University of Cape Town. After graduation, September joined the faculty of Westridge Secondary School. It was at Westridge School where September started her quest to inform students about the apartheid, and she started to challenge the government in ways that were previously unheard of. September sought to deconstruct everything that her students had learned about apartheid history. She sought to relieve her students of gutter education, and she started to educate her students about issues such as the Soweto riots and the constraints that were placed on the education of blacks in South Africa. Mandy Sanger, a teacher at Vista High School in central Cape Town, was known to be the most radical teacher in Cape Town. She viewed herself as an education worker who was fighting an evil and oppressive system. After enduring scrutiny from racist, sexist faculty at the University of Cape Town, Sanger decided to help form the Student Representative Council, a group that was very radical in their efforts to address racism. In her experience as an English teacher at Gardendale High School, she felt that was the best atmosphere to teach an alternative curriculum. The school was quite open to new ideas, and it enabled her to teach students about issues that they face in everyday life.
The devastating Soweto riots and their aftermath have shocked South Africans, black and white, into hard recognition of their country's complex race relations. In and around the townships and shantytowns, pupil power, black power and rampant hooliganism have exploded into a bloody conflagration which has so far left over 100 dead and which will cost the country an estimated 50 million rand.
The student riots of 1976 was one of the factors that brought the apartheid to its knees.
Nelson Mandela, the leader of the anti-apartheid movement, was arrested in 1962, and his political party, the African National Congress, was banned. Over the next 2 decades, brutal government action against anti-apartheid activists had brought the movement to a standstill. It was during these times that young people in the township of Johannesburg, called Soweto, managed to reignite the movement.
Our parents were very much afraid, especially after the banning of ANC and the PSC, the arrests of Mandela. So there was that period of fear among the black people. So no one wanted to involve he or herself in politics because he knew the consequences thereafter. There was this torture, there was this arrest from the police and so on.
South Africans had been living under the system of apartheid since 1948. Citizens were divided by race and kept separate through an elaborate system of laws that governed all aspects of daily life. Even though black people were in the majority, they were denied the right to vote in national elections. The educational system was designed not to educate young black students as intellectuals or professionals, but instead to prepare them to serve the privileged white upper class.
Apartheid went further to divide the schools into a racial grouping. There were white schools and there were black schools that were divided ethnically. Well, of course, the white schools were so advantaged with so many things, especially in terms of resources. They had all the resources as compared to the black schools in Soweto.
In 1974, the apartheid government issued a decree that Afrikaans would be the language of instruction in all South African schools. Afrikaans was the language of the white Dutch minority, and though it had been taught as a foreign language in black South African schools, most subjects had been taught in English or the students' native languages. The decree forced teachers to teach all subjects in Afrikaans.
It was a chaos in our schools. Some our teachers would come in, have a Afrikaans dictionary, and come and teach us. They could not even understand what they were teaching themselves.
The decree enraged students, who began to show their discontent. One student wrote in an editorial in The World, a Johannesburg daily newspaper, "Our parents are prepared to suffer under the white man's rule. They have been living for years under these laws, and they have become immune to them. But we strongly refuse to swallow an education that is designed to make us slaves in the country of our birth." On June 16, 1976, between 15,000 and 20,000 students in Soweto poured out of their classes and marched in their school uniforms. Police dogs and tear gas were used against them, just as they had been used against peaceful protesters in Birmingham, Alabama. Tragically, however, in Soweto, the police also used guns.
Now, the aim of this march was to pledge that solidarity and sing the national anthem, then go home. But because of the mistake that was done by police of shooting a student by the name of Hector Peterson, now everything started to be out of hand. So many students were shot, and so many students were arrested. Violence did not stop. It spread to other townships.
Riots continued across the country for the rest of the year, during which time students set fire to government buildings and other symbols of the apartheid regime. It was a spark that rekindled the fight against apartheid. Nelson Mandela wrote about the student uprisings from his prison cell on Robben Island. At the forefront of this 1976-77 wave of unrest were our students and youth. They come from the universities, high schools, and even primary schools. They are a generation whose whole education has been under the diabolical design of the racist to poison the minds and brainwash our children into docile subjects of apartheid rule. But after more than 20 years of Bantu education, the circle is closed, and nothing demonstrates the utter bankruptcy of apartheid as the revolt of our youth. The movement would falter and revive again several more times in the decade between the student movement and the collapse of the apartheid regime. However, the black majority continued their struggle for equality and eventually triumphed.
Today, I'm a teacher through the struggles of South Africa. If those unrest did not take place, I wouldn't be here. The history of that time shaped my career, it shaped my behavior, it shaped my ideas, that I can know that another person is a human being as well.
One black educator in particular, Mamphela Ramphele, fought against racial segregation in South Africa while unintentionally breaking down barriers as a woman. Memphela Remfele is a former activist against the apartheid, and she is the former vice chancellor for the University of Cape Town. While in college, Memphela became increasingly involved in anti-apartheid activism and became one of the founders of the Black Consciousness Movement. This was a movement that promoted social consciousness about issues such as racial segregation and the mistreatment of blacks. While Memphela was also fighting against apartheid as a black woman, she also was the first black woman to become vice chancellor at the University of Cape Town in 1996. This shows an intersectional analysis. While assessing her triumph, we have to take into consideration the fact that she was a woman, as well as a black woman, as well as an educated black woman. There have been contemporary efforts to enhance the learning experience of Black South African women. One of the most highlighted efforts is the Building a Dream project by Oprah Winfrey. In 2007, Oprah opened a leadership academy for girls in South Africa with the goal of providing educational and leadership opportunities for girls from impoverished backgrounds. According to Winfrey, the academy's goal is to mentor academically talented and disadvantaged girls and provide them with opportunities to make a difference in the world. This school has been seen as a great success since its opening. The school housed about 152 South African girls. That number has now grown to 400, and the school celebrated its first graduating class in 2012. Students from this school have been admitted to the University of Cape Town, Wits University, Rhodes University, and numerous other prestigious universities throughout South Africa.